Welcome into a live edition of Betting Weekly Fast Break on this Wednesday. I'm Doug Kezirian alongside professional handicapper and bettor Albert Nguyen, also known as Analytics Capper. And quite the week we've had in the NBA. We're going to get into everything. Also, two games in the WNBA we'll touch on as well, but it's been fast and furious in free agency on this draft day. So, still props on the board that we will get into. But, Albert, it's been a roller coaster week. And it really started Sunday morning before Game 7 with the Durant news.
Yeah, it's been one after the other after the other. It's been great as fans, right? Just to see how the player movement is happening within the league. But I'm excited to see that all culminated tonight in the draft because there's going to be some draft day deals and then some deals afterwards as well. So excited about that. But also we have some games tonight. I know the NBA is over, but don't forget, there's WNBA and there's two games on the slate tonight as well.
Now we'll get into them. Couple big spreads, one really big in injury news for one of the teams involved. So we'll dissect that momentarily. We'll also have some draft props in a bit and also overall philosophy. But we want to remind you to subscribe and like the podcast. We know it's currency these days in YouTube world, and it's what we do for for analytics and to pay the bills. And obviously, it's a free show for you. So we would appreciate your efforts on that, and also get involved in the conversation. Let us know your thoughts, questions you have, whether it be about specific bets tonight or future or just feedback and general sports questions. We are here. We want to interact with you throughout these live shows. And we are every day, Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, right here on the Bet Rivers Network under the Betting Weekly umbrella. Also, don't forget the newsletter. Tons of good information. Wimbledon's right around the corner. The guys have soccer previews, tennis previews. We have Bet Rivers odds everywhere. We have links to these shows. It's really an in-depth newsletter. Go sign up for free at the Betting Weekly Insider, bettingweeklystudios.com. Albert, we had the Celtics getting under the second apron, which was so important. I feel like the East is wide open right now, except for one team. And I do think there's value betting the Cavaliers. And no one wants to bet one of the favorites this time of year. I get it, but we showed it to you on Monday. Going into the season, the Oklahoma City Thunder were plus 900 to win it all. So there can be value at the beginning of the season, and the Cavs don't really have to do anything. They can run it back. And yeah, the Mitchell injury was a factor this year, but they lost to the Pacers fair and square. But the three significant Achilles injuries are all in the Eastern Conference with Tatum, Lillard, and Halliburton. This was the one seed out east. I think they're going to grow and benefit from having lost in the second round in an upset fashion. I think if you have a plus 800 ticket when the playoffs start next year, I think anyone who has it will be really happy with where the Cavs are.
It makes a lot of sense to me, Doug. The only caveat is, we're 2025, 25 years into this millennia. I think the West has won the final 17 of those 25 years, maybe 18 of those 25 years, and that's including three of LeBron's dominant runs, right? So it's hard for me to believe in an Eastern Conference team being able to beat the Thunder or the Nuggets or, the Rockets. LA, improve their team with Luca and LeBron as well. So it's hard for me to get there, but I would say it's they have to make the finals at this point, right?
Right.
Because without Halliburton and Tatum for Boston, the path is very clear. The one thing that is somewhat of a caution there is Darius Garland. He did have surgery on his foot. I think he's going to be out 4 to 5 months, which puts him halfway through the season. So look out for that. Maybe wait and maybe they get off to a slow start, and that's when you want to fire.
Thunder, understandably, are the betting favorites at plus 200 at Bet Rivers. So there's definitely a tier. They're alone by themselves. And then three teams are in that next tier: the Cavs, Rockets with Durant, and then the Knicks, who still don't have a coach. But obviously, and look, we're not groundbreaking news here. The Eastern Conference is going to be much more wide open. Well, I guess the West is technically maybe more wide open, but the East has an easier path because teams are limited and you're not going to have to go through the carnage that you would out West. So, as while the Thunder are the favorites, there's still a lot of good teams. And again, we don't know where some of the trades are going to happen, the free agency. We just know Brad Stevens is wheeled and deal to get below the second apron. But I wouldn't count out the Celtics next year. We don't know what's going to happen with Horford, Cornette. If they flip Brown, I don't think they're going to. But Tatum could return for the last couple months. We don't know for sure. Also, they're going to have expiring contracts at the deadline next year with both Simons and another player that is escaping me. Oh, George Niang, who they just got in the deal. So they could flip that for, I don't know, this year's version of Luca, right? Like a disgruntled star or a team that doesn't want to go super max. So they could improve overnight and on the fly. And I believe in Orlando, but I don't. I think they're going to be better, but they remind me of Memphis. Ironically, they just got Desmond Bain, but Memphis was never a true contender in my eyes. And I just don't know how it all going to play out. But I like the idea of the East being there for the taking, and that's why I like the Cavs. But you're right. Like the East is not dominated, but there's so much player movement, it can just sort of be random at times as well.
I would say you read my mind when it comes to the Boston Celtics, but I wouldn't do anything in terms of a betting, putting money on anything as of right now, because it's gonna really be dependent on the third move. If there's gonna be a third move, right? We saw Drew Holiday move one, we saw Kristaps Porzingis move number two, but if there's a third move, then we know that that franchise and that team is not necessarily tanking, or it's not necessarily a gap year without Tatum. It's more of like, okay, let's see how we can play with lesser talent. But if they run it, if they stand pat now after these two moves, then I fully agree with Doug. I think it's great value for Boston here because the infrastructure there, the coaching is there, and they have championship pedigree more than anyone out there in the East. So I wouldn't count them out. They're always going to have great home court advantage as well. So I like Boston if they stand pat after those two moves.
Just playing with some numbers here. Celtics are plus 2,400. So they're 24 to 1 long shots right now. And things can change overnight. Um, I don't think Brown's going to be traded, but if he got traded and things like that, and they blow it up, so be it. But I think they're going to be in the running right now for a team that could finish in the top four out east. And again, maybe Tatum comes back. I don't know how this stuff goes. No one knows for sure on a medical surgery and things like that. But this team is not going to punt on next year. They're
Agree.
not lottery bound in my eyes. At worst, they're playing bound and then see from there. So I think there's options. Now, I'm not saying 24 to 1's value, but it's in the back of my head. What do you feel about the Rockets being the second favorite at 8 to 1?
I think it's justified. I think they should be the second favorite out there in the West. Kevin Durant, although, 37 years old, you're always going to have risks there for injury. But from an individual perspective, like he is arguably the best, bucket getter we've ever had in this league. And that was the Achilles heel for Houston last season, especially in the playoff run. But it's gonna take a full effort. I would say like they have to be healthy and not only Durant, right? Amin Thompson, who's a star in the making, like he has to continue to ascend. Sengun still has to improve himself, in addition to guys like Tari Eason and Cam Whitmore and Reed Shepard. So I would say it makes a lot of sense, but from a betting perspective today, as of June 25th, I would wait because that trade for Kevin Durant was only a couple days ago. So there's overreaction to that news right now. And the other teams out west are going to be reloading as well. LA, Denver, Dallas, maybe. So I would wait because you're going to get longer odds, in my opinion, closer to the season.
I respectfully disagree. I mean, I understand the money coming in. So if that's the money and they're managing risk, so be it. I can't tell them behind the counter what's going on without knowing. But I don't I still think their starting lineup is shaky. Like
Mm.
Fred VanVleet was shaky. He's near the end of his career, so to speak. And Jabari Smith has never really panned out. So the depth that was there in Houston is kind of gone if they're starting those guys. And now look, Van Vliet's injury certainly played a factor, but just because they have Durant doesn't mean they're going to get buckets every time. He likes to stand in the corner. I think he's too old to run all the offense through him. So I think they're still going to have a lot of issues. And yeah, he'll be better. That he'll be an improvement from Jalen Green. So it's like great, they'll score 94 instead of 94 a game in the playoffs. They'll score 101. But I
Yeah.
don't know if they're going to be able to do enough. I like Sengun a lot, but I think they're another piece away. I think
That
the
and
Durant
and
move has
that's
to be
that's
like the
exactly it.
Celtics in '08.
Yeah,
Right.
that's exactly it, Doug, is the fact that they kept Jabari and Cam and Reed and Tari, right? They're 4 young players, and still some draft capital. They have opportunities to make another splash, whether it's a superstar or a second fiddle. But I don't disagree in terms of the inconsistency when it comes to Fred VanVleet. It's hard to, count on him for all 7 games in a series, but he's good enough, in my opinion, to be a starting caliber point guard for a championship contender team, even if he's that consistent. Just because we know he's going to play great defense, we know his percentages, closing games is really good, and he's not worried about taking that big shot. So if someone's going to run a second or third defender at Kevin Durant, it's not going to be Sengun making that shot. It's not going to be Amin Thompson just because he doesn't have a jumper currently. It'll be Fred VanVleet make taking and making those shots. So I don't mind him as your point guard, but I agree. I think they're one piece away, and they have all the assets and draft capital to do that move right now. Still,
I would think the Nuggets should be the second favorite. They still have Jokic at the peak of his game, and then injuries reared their ugly head. I think they're going to get better fits around him,
interesting.
like some of these role players, things like that. And then clearly the coach issue was, I don't know, infecting the locker room, or maybe there was just. I love I love Michael Malone. I just think people were at odds or whatever. It was just time for a breakup. That's all. So, anything stand out to you in terms of the futures conference or futures odds before we
I
move
would
on?
say I would say the Mavericks are a little mispriced. I think there's some truth to Kyrie being a little overrated at this point of his career. He is going to be coming off an ACL injury, so he's not going to be back until January or even February. But with Cooper Flag in, and then they have still really really great role players around the stars with AD and Kyrie. They still have the two headed monster with Gafford and Lively. They still have PJ Washington, who's most likely going to be extended soon. Clay Thompson, although back end of his career, he can still win you a game, especially if he's coming off the bench and playing like 20 minutes. So I think I think Dallas is a little underrated from a betting perspective. I think it's a good time, in my opinion, to fire.
All right, so it's a little tricky, right? You have the Spurs at 24-1, just because the West, no matter what seed you get, 1 or 8, you're gonna have to go through 3 good teams
Yeah.
just to get to the final. So I see there's some beefiness to a few of these Western Conference teams. I agree. I think Dallas on paper, once you add Cooper Flag, really becomes interesting, especially with Flag being a good defender, because that was the identity the Mavs wanted by acquiring Anthony Davis. There's a lot to like, but if you look at the teams ahead of them, I mean, the Lakers are always going to be ahead of them just because of managing risk for the house. But other than that, a lot of these teams are they like maybe they should be ahead where the Clippers are. So I would agree with you that I would flip the Clippers and the Mavs. Warriors is another question. I think the Eastern Conference teams is just because their path to the finals is easier. I think from a power rating standpoint, like if these teams faced each other on a neutral court, you'd have a bunch of Western Conference teams ahead of anyone in the East. Like that's the key is the head to head, the power ratings, all that's very different when you look at neutral site two-way odds like a point spread versus the futures market where it's the path through the east. So I'd be curious to get what an odds maker has as a power rating right now for all the teams in the NBA and where the breakdown of the West and the East are.
You think there's any truth to, the league ever getting rid of conferences? Because we've had this for basically 3 decades now, where one conference kind of dominates. Dominates is a strong word, but it's much deeper, much more talented, and you see teams that are missing the playoffs in the West that would be like a fourth seed in the East.
I'm okay with it. I like it because it's a byproduct of the season, right? The schedule that's slanted towards teams that play each other regionally. So, and I know travel has improved for these professional organizations and they fly privately and it's easier, but I just think it's conducive to logic and regionality and things like that. And honestly, I go back to what was it, 2009 when the Beastquake Marshawn Lynch ran in the playoffs against the Saints, and everyone was so up in arms that a team with a losing record, 7-9, was hosting a playoff game, and they wanted to redo the format in the East or the NFL. And then, like 3 years later or 2 years later, the NFC West is the best division in football.
Yeah.
So I just think things happen, and there's going to be outlier scenarios that shouldn't force rule changes. But to your point, It's been going on a long time. I just think it's player movement and things along those lines. Miami had LeBron and Wade, and they were the dominant team, and they came out of the East. So it just really depends what happens with the draft. I mean, look, Cooper Flag could have been going to an Eastern Conference team just as easily as the West, and maybe he's the guy you build around. Wembenyama was the number one pick. That could have been an Eastern Conference team. So it just plays out, and I just think it's more fluky. And if a team can't get to the playoffs with a certain record in the West, maybe you get lucky like Dallas and win the lottery. So maybe it's a blessing in disguise some years. But if it's really been an issue for years, I'm open to I'd like to see the presentation, I guess. Maybe I'm not thinking of an easy solution that I'm overlooking and saying, oh, yeah, well, of course, if that's the solution, yeah, I like it. So maybe I'm just ignoring something. Okay, so we're going to have more NBA talk with the draft tonight. We'll get into a lot of props that are still on the board at Bet Rivers and some good opportunities as networks post their final mock drafts. But first, let's talk about the WNBA. We have two games on the docket tonight, and not the high profile matchups that we have on Friday, because we have Paige Beckers against Caitlin Clark on Friday, which should be an electric showdown. We have two games, but look, all tickets cash the same, right? Liberty are 9.5 point road favorites at the Valkyries, who are the biggest surprise right now in the W this season. And then the Connecticut Sun, with Marina Mabry out and hurt for a while, they are 19 point underdogs in Vegas against the Aces. That seems like an absurd number, but it's 19 and a half, I should say, as I look at the screen. Anything jump out to you? We'll talk about both games. I'm curious which game you want to start with.
Yeah, I've leans on both games. We'll start with the Valkyries, and I think the Valkyries have been an amazing story, right? For those who don't know, expansion team, first year in the league. I think they're going to be two expansion teams next year, if I'm not mistaken. But I think, and Doug, I would love to hear your thoughts, but I think Golden State have been playing above their heads. I don't think from a talent perspective, they should be winning 5 of the last 6 games, which is completely impressive. Props to them, but I don't think it's sustainable. So, my lean here tonight is actually the Liberty, and the Liberties. They've been a team, we know that this is a championship or bust type roster. That's their mindset. They're not trying to win these games and blow out these games in the middle of the season. They want to be peaking at the right time, right towards the postseason. But I think there's been questions when it comes to the Liberty, whether they're dealing with injuries, whether it's the coaching. I think tonight they kind of just shut that out and they dominate a team that they should dominate, right? They're already 2-0 head to head against this team. They covered one, they did not cover the other. I think the Liberty, I like Liberty always first quarter, first half, full game. The lean here is going to be full game minus 9.5. It's not official yet, but I do like the Liberty tonight.
Couple things to note, and it's obviously part of the handicap. Sabrina Ionescu is expected to return to the lineup tonight. Jonquel Jones is out 4 to 6 weeks. So that's a big factor. For those who don't know, she was finals MVP last year. I'd say she's their third best player if it were a one-on-one tournament, but she's incredibly valuable. And in terms of the big three, I mean, she might be more valuable than Brianna Stewart, although Stewie picked up the scoring in one of these recent games. So it's really hard to tell, but she's super valuable, and they're just a different team without her. They're also missing Phoebus, who's overseas playing your ball. So that's two starters that are out. They're coming off back-to-back losses. So the spot screams Liberty in this situation. I agree with you in that regard. They just lost to Seattle without Ionescu and Jonquel Jones. I just wonder what this team, the firepower, like. I think Sabrina is fun to watch. I think she's got good range, but I don't think she's super athletic. And therefore, I think she forces herself into bad shots, like highlight reel attempts, and she plays out of her lane. I think a lot of players do, so it's not just her. And then unless Stewie like channels her former MVP self like she did in the other game, I think this team's got issues. And the Valkyries have the best coach in the league. I'm convinced. I think the Aces being, falling back a little bit, it's obviously a limited roster, things like that. And Asia Wilson got hurt, but I think Becky Hammond is missing Nakase on the bench. And this run of Caitlin Clark, who's been struggling in 3 straight games, started against the Valkyries. Nakase threw interesting defenses at her. She started to struggle, and I'm convinced the next two opponents are copying her. So I think she's the best coach in the league. I thought of this a week ago or so. I was like, why don't I just bet the Valkyries every game against the point spread the rest of the year? If you did that the rest of the year, Albert, would you be positive or negative, you think?
Oh man, I don't know. I think they're one of those teams that are gonna end up being 50-50. I think if you
I don't
just
know.
did I think if you just did money line, I think that would be the right play, the better play there, because you just need basically win 2 out of 5 games, right? And you'll be up.
Yeah.
But um I don't know. I think we're gonna disagree on this game, which is completely fine, right? That's why we're doing these type of shows. I would agree with you that New York's offense has been struggling, and it doesn't help that they're missing Jonquel Jones. But to me, I want their defense to really step up, and I think that's what really separated them last year during the postseason run was they were playing great defense and then just getting clutch shooting. That's actually the finals run was to me Sabrina's coming out party. Like she had so much hype heading into her career, professional career, with the whole Kobe thing and all that. But she to me was more hype than anything until that final series where she made huge shots, made huge plays, big free throws. And I was hoping for her to carry that into this season and be, like a first team all NBA, all WNBA type performer. Again, she's very inconsistent. I think Doug mentioned she's just not very quick. She's not very athletic, and that really hurts her. But I think she's still fundamentally sound. Her footwork is great. And I think, tonight being back, especially with a couple games off, fatigue is not an issue. I like New York to come out. And again, it's both a backing of New York because they're coming off 2 straight losses, so a great spot there, but also a fade of Golden State, who I mentioned, like they might be a really good team. I could be completely wrong, but I don't think they can sustain this 5 wins out of 6 games, rate that they're on right now.
It's a fair point. The spot screams Liberty and to fade it's a double whammy. It screams to bet on New York and fade the Valkyries. I'm just a little gun shy because I think once injuries occur, and I've talked to odds makers, so it's not like I'm inventing the wheel here. They don't like injuries. Like just to any sport, whatnot. They trust their power ratings. Those are, backed by a lot of data, blah, blah, blah. What's not backed by a lot of data is statistics without certain key players.
Yeah.
They don't know what the true power rating is without Jonquel Jones. They have it. They know it. They're more confident in that rating with Jonquel Jones and Phoebus in the starting lineup. And the Valkyries are kind of new animal, right? So they kind of have a power rating, but they don't. So I think it's a soft market to begin with, and then when there's moving parts like an expansion team that's playing way above their weight, and then also a Liberty team that's missing a key player, I think it could be the true line could be 6.5, could be 12.5. I don't know. It's
The
probably
other
close.
great thing
Feels right, but yeah.
Yeah, the other positive with the Valkyries is they have a real home court advantage. I don't know if you've
Mhm.
watched any of these games. I know Doug has, but our viewers, these are sold out games at Chase Center, and they're very energetic. They're super loud. They're very appreciative that they have a WNBA team in their city now, and so it's hard for these teams to come in and kind of match that energy from the crowd and from the home players. So maybe 9.5 is a little rich. I just think it's a spot for me, and it's something I've always done. I'm not going to waver now. It's going to be a smaller play anyways, just because WNBA plays longer season, a lot of games. I have smaller plays, more volume.
The next game is Las Vegas hosting Connecticut. We mentioned Sun without their, let's say, best or second best player in Marina Mabry. She creates offense off the dribble, off the set shot, you name it. Aces are 19-point home favorites, over under 160. Sun just put up 63 points against the aforementioned Valkyries in the Bay Area. Whew. Their team total is pretty low. 73, I believe, is what it is. How would you play this game? It's a big number, but what did the Sun have outside of Tina Charles?
Oh yeah, I would definitely lean the aces here. I actually like the under a lot more than the sides there. So when it comes to the team total, Sun 73, that sounds crazy to me. I don't think they're even going to get out at 60. So
Right.
I would definitely lean the under there for the team total on the Sun. I would lean Aces on the side. I believe it's minus 19 and a half for a reason. Aces are healthy now. Asia is back. And I think, going through that struggle the first month has really, lit a fire under this team, in my opinion. And I think they're going to start blowing out teams. People are underrating the Aces. And then as far as the total, I mean, if I'm going to lean the team total under on the Sun, I'm also going to lean the full game under 160. So that's probably going to be an official play for me, Doug. Let's just put that on. I like the under here, 160. It's one of those games where it's a big spread. I expect the favorite to cover, but the point total to go under. So that's going to be a huge blowout, in my opinion.
Okay, and I misspoke. The team total for Connecticut's 70.5, under minus 121 at Bet Rivers. And I don't know what we're going to get. I mean, it's also sometimes, those, listening may not know too much about hockey betting, but there was an era where the first season of the Golden Knights where teams came into Vegas and sort of punted on the game because they like either did their rookie initiation or they partied and it was team bonding. I'm not sure Connecticut's all about this road trip. I mean, if you look at who they're facing, right? They just got waxed at Golden State. Now they're playing Vegas, Seattle, and Minnesota. Three contenders all on the road. They're going every other day, starting in Vegas. So they go Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. I mean, are they going to cover any of these games? I mean, they could just be waxed on these courts. And I would look at first half for the Aces because we know, and Albert, you and I have talked about it on this very program, how Becky Hammond loves to pull her team and they get the scrubs come in and get outscored in the fourth quarter. So I'd be looking at some line value with the Aces first half here. I think the Sun are that bad. Tina Charles is a nice player, but she's also going to be guarded by arguably the best defender in the league, a former defensive player of the year in Asia Wilson. So if Tina Charles doesn't have that matchup advantage like she does some of the lesser experienced players that often guard her, then where's the offense going to come from on Connecticut? Like I like Rivers. I like some of the, but like what Bria Hartley's going to take people off the dribble. Like I just don't see it.
Yeah.
And I think this could be a beatdown the more I think about it. And to your point, Vegas just ended their losing streak by beating the Fever. Big win, big comeback. And I think they're ready to sort of use that as a launching pad.
I completely agree with that point. I think that was a huge win. They showed that they still have elite defense on that team. They completely shut down Caitlin Clark, and that's a much better team that the Fever have than the Sun. Without Marina Mabrey, the only way, like I mentioned, getting out of 60 points, the only way for them to even hit the 60-point mark is to just be really hot from three, right? Like the Aces are going to give up some wide open threes, just like any team. You're going to have 4 or 5 wide open opportunities each quarter. If they make those, then yeah, I agree. I can see this game being, within 20 points, but I think this is Aces runaway, and I do agree with you. The first half is probably a stronger look, but I think with Asia back, I think she's kind of like she's so competitive and so focused, Doug, that she leads by example, right? So like when she's trying hard, even up 25 in the fourth quarter, it makes her teammates try just as hard. So that's how high I believe in Asia Wilson and her effect on this team.
You see the line on the screen, it's 10.5 minus 113 at Bet Rivers. I'm going to lay it. I'm going to make that an official
Nice.
play. And to your point, Albert, the Aces can't mess around. They're 6-7.
Hmm.
She missed a few games. They were on a losing streak. Like they're not in a place where they're the two-time defending champs anymore, where they have the luxury of cruising past the Sun. Just we want to encourage you to join the conversation on the comment section here on the YouTube channel. Petey said the Sun are so bad, a lot of O's. Without Mabry, they're really bad. And I agree. I think this was the worst team in the league to begin with. And when you lose a player like Marina Mabry, who also is a super competitor, and we saw her push Caitlin Clark the other day in that scuffle with the Indiana, but she's a fiery person, and I think teammates feed off that. When you have that absence, you of course are missing the scoring. Someone who's capable of scoring 34 like she did earlier this season, but there's a domino effect, and it's a tough road trip here for Connecticut. So I think we're on to something here with the Aces first half. So I'm going to make that an official play. You're on the under 160 as an official play, but for now in the other game, just a lean to the Liberty. Okay. Now we get to the NBA draft, and this is awesome. But I do think there's a PSA that people, we kind of need to like revisit. There's a lot of steam chasers. That's the first thing I want to bring up. And when you see a money line start to move in an index bet or Edgecombe to go third overall, I get it. But what are you looking to gain if you're going to lay a big juice versus what what can you lose, and what would it take after you lose that bet to like get that money back? So it's like you have to kind of win 3 bets to get money back on a -3 something steam chasing draft prop. And I just think you need to be careful. We talked about it yesterday. If you're new to this, kind of dabble maybe with some long shots, but you have to really understand the nuance of it. But here we are, Albert, on draft day. All the mock drafts are out there, the final mock drafts of a bunch of outlets. And, there's consensus for a lot of these plays, and then there's some that are opposite. How do you handle these final mock drafts on draft day when you see odds on the board? And it's not like the odds makers know anything more than you do. So when you see these things, how tempting is it just to follow this? Like, how do you approach it all with knowing what these mock drafts are in your hand?
Yeah, you mentioned it. I think a lot of people don't realize these odds makers are following the same intel and info that we have. They might have a little bit more in terms of, the scouts or what the front offices are saying that we may not have privy to, but for the most part, it's going to be a lot of reactionary news. For example, the move of Ace Bailey falling from 3 to now 4, 5, potentially even 6, because he doesn't want to play for the Jazz or the Hornets. It really just depends. The way I look at it, Doug, and I'm not a big draft futures guy in general. That's NBA, NFL, any of it. But I would say you need to aggregate all that data that you've been, compiling for the last few weeks, and not just focus on the very last version of the mock draft. You have to see the player movement from, version 1.0, 1.0 to what it is today. But there is some semblance to, I call them pump fakes, right? The books are pump faking these betters because they know that they're going to get a ton of action if they put a certain player. You talk about index betting. Just they know how to manipulate the game, just like we are players playing the game as well. So just be mindful of that. It's better sometimes to not have a bet at all. But I do have one later, and I'm excited to talk about that.
I would say you aggregate for sure, but the odds makers are doing that as well. Just know that there's a method to the madness. If you haven't been doing this a while, certain I mean, look, certain insiders are more reliable than others, but you also kind of have to know their what their resources are, and you don't know everything. But if their sources have been rock solid, like is if Shams is like really good with the Hawks over the years, then he's got to get like it's all about agents and sources, but sometimes there's front office turnover and things change. So that's why it can get a little tricky. And God forbid, he can have a few picks wrong, or there's one wild card team that moves up takes a pick. So trades can be the worst. Trades are my enemy in kryptonite to a portfolio of draft bets in any sport. I lost. The only time I ever lost in the draft was a couple years ago when there was a record for number of round one trades. A lot were on game day, and I still would have won if the Houston Texans, who went back to back, just took Stroud at one pick back and flipped with Anderson. So these things happen. You just have to be really careful. I think I like to focus on upside in terms of value, right? So if a guy could go there and you're hearing it in one mock, like, if he's plus 600, like, that's much more likely to build a portfolio because a lot of times you'll see like 5 guys mocked in like a 3 pick window. So if the odds make sense, you can sort of play around with it and have protection. And it's all about grabbing the right price. Like if you beat the market and you get plus 300 and the guy's now plus 150, well, now the only other option, if you're laying $2, then you're basically doing a scalp. And so there's all sorts of sort of finesse, and you have to use the entire tool belt on some of these for depending on the scenario, but it can get a little slippery. So I would just be careful out there. And these mocks aren't gospel. They're not tomorrow's newspaper. You don't know what's going to happen. Typically, the top of the draft is more accurate than the bottom of the draft, obviously. But just something to keep in mind. So around pick 5 is going to be different than pick 10 and things like that. Do you have any props that already stand out to you that you think are worth making here on this draft day?
Yeah, I like one pick, and it's going to be around the Creighton center, Ryan Kalkbrenner. It's very rare that we see a 4-year senior coming out, right? I think he's 23 and a half years old. He's ancient when it comes to some of these other kids coming out, but he's arguably the best shot blocker in the draft. We know he can score around the bucket, can turn over both shoulders, left and right, and is working on his shooting touch from 3. So I think some team, my bet is going to be, a first round pick. If you look at a lot of the mock drafts right now, it looks like he's going early second round, which makes a lot of sense because of the things I mentioned. He's older, he's not super athletic. Um, but I think I'm gonna go against the mock drafts here, Doug. I like
Okay.
him to go at the bottom of the first round to one of those teams that, are going for it. One of those teams that are in win now mode. And we talk about teams like Boston, for example. I think Boston is a team that's not ready to tank the season, and he just seems like 23 years old. He's white, Doug. Like it just matches the Boston. Everything about that. He's well coached. He has great fundamentals. If it's not Boston, I could see a team like OKC. Same kind of mantra there, very similar. Like they're just, picking up talented guys that are easily coached, that have great fundamentals, and not really going for the high risk, high reward type guys. And so I see either OKC or Boston or a team like Orlando who, has made some great, improvements with their team with Desmond Bain, but they are missing a backup center. And I think, with Wendell Carter potentially leaving, I think this is a good replacement for him. He can come in right now to any NBA team, probably play 10 to 15 minutes at backup center.
These guys who are older and things like that, teams don't care if they're in sort of win now mode. And maybe the Celtics would be one, but it's more about, like you said, Orlando, the Thunder, those teams. So you're going to have to sweat it out because it's typically going to be the end of the first round, but at least you got a few teams and a handful of teams. You never know. And the 20s always get sort of funky. So it's good to have that, um, unknown or whatever
Yeah, that the
situation.
downfall for me, Doug, is the Brooklyn Nets. They have so many picks at the bottom of the first round, so they're definitely not drafting him. So I have to sweat it out because
Good point.
they're not in winning mode. So I still like it. Again, all the mock drafts have him basically like 32 or 33, but I think one of those smarter analytics driven teams are gonna come up and get him in the end of the first round.
It's interesting. I like it. I like it. I have one play, and it goes against what Chris Massero, professional bettor, who was on the show on Monday, was saying, and we both can be right. He was saying that Derek Queen could be a stud, like another Jokic slash Sengun sort of knockoff, and that's why he took some value on reaching for him. But my point is, I I'm not the scout. Like I don't do. I'm just going off what I'm reading and the intel, and I don't think teams are in love with Queen. And I think his over under is a little too low. So I'm going to go Queen over 11 and a half at plus 104. I just think when you look at these guys like Asenge's getting more solidified in the top 10, assuming Paley doesn't keep falling out of the tent. Like I just think they're running out of spots to draft Queen, and his defense is supposedly so bad. Now, offense, it's kind of like the old Dominican, like you don't walk off the island in baseball. Like you get drafted based on offense, and he has a bag in terms of his size and agility. But if a team takes him, so what? I lost a plus money bet. But I think I'm going to do a regular play on Queen over 11 and a half. I just think the number's a little too low, and I'm going to have to play the over because based on all the like he could go 15th kind of thing. So I think he goes above 10. So it's or around so it's 10 or higher. And I just think there's more ways to win in terms of the window. It's like 10 through 17 or so, maybe 10 through 15. And I think 12, there's obviously just more numbers. And at plus money, I like it. I don't think there's a team like at the 11th slot that says, absolutely, we will not let him get past us. I just don't think he's that type of player. Maybe he is, like we talked about with Giannis and some of these taking a shot opportunities that some of these teams do. I just don't think Queen's that guy for those teams at that spot.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And for those who, need a little more context on the draft, so 10 is Phoenix, 11 is Portland, and then after that would be Chicago, Atlanta, San Antonio. He seems like a San Antonio type player, right? Like I know San Antonio, they have their timeline. It feels like they're ahead of their timeline because of their trade for De'Aaron Fox, but with Dylan Harper coming in, like I think they can extend this timeline for another like 2 or 3 years, and it would be a great. I think Derek Queen would be a really nice wing for them because he has Doug mentioned the offensive game, and his bag to me is not just scoring. Like he is a great playmaker with great size, and I think that's only going to help guys like Dylan Harper and Wemby, and even Stephon Castle as they improve.
I mean, we saw his game winner in the tournament. He put the ball on the court and drove. And you're right. I mean, look, the Sengun comparisons are there. I like those. Um, we'll see. And like I said, if I lose, I lose. So recapping our best bets, I have two. Derek Queen over 11.5 in terms of his draft position tonight. That's plus 104. And also the Aces first half line minus 10.5, minus 113, hosting the Connecticut Sun. Albert, all I have for you as official play is that game, Suns and Aces, under 160.
I'll take the draft bet as well. The Cockbrenner first round pick minus 159, I believe, is at Bet Rivers.
Nice. All right. You're on the board there. So two official plays for you. We just want to remind everyone, like I said, Wimbledon's around the corner. The bracket draw is coming up on Friday, and we will have a special edition of Betting Weekly Tennis Live. Nigel, Rory, and Tim will break down that bracket draw. Live shows are available on demand on YouTube. So please check it out. And we're going to have the Fast Break show every weekday throughout the summer. It's 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. We obviously got huge games in the W coming up. We'll also have futures. We'll have obviously more transactions in the NBA to react to. We'll have some prop bets, and summer league betting is around the corner as well. There are point spreads and over-unders every single day, and there's good betting opportunities out there in Vegas, and I'll have some people, I'm connected to out in the desert here. So a lot of good stuff ahead. Albert, we appreciate the insight as always. Good luck to all your wagers out there. So for Albert and everyone behind the scenes, we appreciate your loyalty, your subscribing and liking, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.